Yeah, it goes everybody, because today we'll be playing a game called Round the Mulberry Bush. Sounds whimsical enough. Let's see. Text speed is fast, cool. Right. So let's start. Commence. The first summer, 1789. Yeah, right? On the first summer, my life changed forever. It was not the first summer of my life, of course, for I lived through 12 summers prior, and this has to be the 13th. It was, however, the first summer that I met her, and my whole life started anew, just as the melting winter snow heralds the coming spring. All the days and months and years that preceded the long string of for once were summers, like stagnating pools, ceased to matter. They were nothing more than a dull noise, a background hum. Unimportant. Just like all the other texts from the fucking beginning. Everything was and it is utterly unimportant when compared to her. Right. Oh, is that her, the tree? The summer we met was warm, as all summers with her seemed to be, free from icy chills or unexpected showers. I remember the sunlight that filtered down from above, intercepted by the leaves, dancing across her face, her skin, her hair, like flickering fireflies. That was the first impression I had of Matilda Edison. I was in awe of her beauty, even back then. Cool, okay. Wait, that's a bloody hand, what the hell? She wasn't perfect, though. In fact, she was far from it. She was nothing like the little girl I saw in the portrait later, hanging above the fireplace, enshrined within a gift frame. Oh, not a gift, a gilt frame, whatever that means. She was rumpled, eyes wild, like an unbroken colt. Loose curls fell around her shoulders, framing her heart-shaped face, catching in the glorious summer sun. That's a bloody face. And of course there were her cheeks, her lips, her fingertips. They were a harsh, unmistakable black red, so intense I could almost believe she had been digging her fingers inside the carcass of a dying baby bird. Baby bird? What? A baby bird exudes that much blood? Really? What kind of baby bird was that? Is that like 10 feet or whatever? But no lady would have done such a cruel and terrible thing, and she was undeniably a lady. I was painfully aware of the fact, though she was only 9, I 13, and I was far, far taller than her, 9, 10, 11, 12, 30, 4 years apart. What happened to your face? She looked at me curiously, tilting her head to one side, but there was no shame in her face, no anxiety, no awkwardness. She did not seem upset by her appearance, disheveled and dirty though it was. Instead, she observed me, chewing on a mouthful of mulberries, pushing them from one cheek to the other. Oh, so yeah. Mulberries. Is that... yeah, it looks like blood, but sure. I could only stare at her, cowed in silence. My fingers trembled and I had to clench them into fists. I was afraid. This little girl in her white dress with her messy blonde hair had managed to unnerve me. Yeah, who wouldn't be? I wondered what I should do. She had never met me before and she had no idea who I was, though I knew who she was, and that seemed horribly unfair in my mind. I might have been old enough to work and sweat with men more than thrice my age, but it had not been so long ago that I had played at being a knight, a soldier, a brave hero, with the boys who lived down the road. That childlike naivete still clung to me, like dewdrops on the morning grass. My head was full of dreams, my heart full of hopes. She may have been the daughter of a noble, but she was still a little girl, and she would bleed when she was cut like I. She deserved to know my name when I knew hers, an equivalent exchange, a full metal alchemist thingy. When I was deluding myself if I thought my name was worth as much as her own, she would have been accustomed to being known. She was, after all, of noble stock. Her family was not the wealthiest in Lancashire, whatever, but they were wealthy enough. Hey, wealthy is wealthy. I wondered how much money her dress had cost, and her socks and her shoes, and the strip of crimson ribbon that decorated her hat. It was probably more than my family earned in a year. It was more than I would earn in 10 years. Shut up, motorcycle. I'm in a fantasy setting right now, and you are ruining the recording. It was disgusting, so disgusting I could hardly bear to look at her. Her dirty face, her smeared fingers, and the rumpled folds of fabric that comprised her summer dress. Oh, not comprise her summer dress, sorry. I remember feeling small and slighted, despite my recent growth spurt. I felt like she was judging me, though I knew and I was being foolish. She was just a little girl, far littler than me. But the gulf between us, our social status, was an insurmountable chasm. And had been arrogant enough to assume my name was worth anything to her. Why should it have been? I was just another servant, uninterchangeable as the seasons, undistinguishable from the rest. As if she would care. Well, though I'd always loved reading fantastic tales of chivalry and romance and daring-do, I somehow managed to read her all wrong. She swallowed a mouthful of fruit pulp and fruit juice, her delicate throat convulsing, and she wiped her lips with the back of her arm. The juice streaked across her cheek, across her wrist, in the red ribbon. A defiant statement. She did not seem to care. Alright. So, mister... My breath caught in my throat and I found myself feeling dizzy, lightheaded. Does she have bad breath? The birds that chirped in the nearby trees fell softly silent. At least they seem to, because she's eating their food resource. The birds are like, what the fuck? Why are you doing this? Save some for us, you bastard. In reality, they were still twittering away merrily, just as before, but I had drowned them out. My own anxieties had silenced them. My heart was beating so hard I worried it might rupture. Alright. She seemed unaware of my plight. Perhaps it was because she was accustomed to seeing servants lesser beings struck dumb in her presence. She had been brought up with a silver spoon in her mouth and mulberry stains on her face, and I could hardly imagine how different the world she lived in was to my own. I wondered if the blue sky, the green trees, the black-red juice and pulp on her fingers were even brighter, more brilliant to her eyes than mine. Did you come here to eat fruits too? She asked, her voice slightly innocent, like she did not know I had come here to serve her. I glanced at the withered old mulberry tree, the branches groaning under the weight of those dark fruits. The girl had harvested an expansive crop on her own, but there were yet more fruits to be had. Far, far more. God damn it, this text is so small. Fuck. Maybe it was because I was feeling anxious, but I found myself recalling something my mother had told me a long time ago. You shouldn't eat too many, I told her. If you do, you'll get a stomachache. The girl replied, slightly lackadaisical. She seemed to ponder the point, but only for a while, and then tossed it aside carelessly with a small shrug. Well, it's too late for that. Yeah, I suppose it is, I conceded, running one hand through my hair. How many berries have you eaten? I don't know, she replied, digging the tip of her shoe into the dirt. Yeah, okay. For a daughter of a noble family, she was incredibly grubby, and not just a little, around the edges, but all over. Her dress was stained and her shoes were tarnished with the splotches of dirt, and there was a rim of grime beneath every single one of her fingernails. Wow, we have a keen sense of observation. What sharp eyes do we have? All of a sudden, I did not feel afraid of her anymore. She might have been a lady, but she was what my mother would have called a mucky pup. Right. So, she said in her funny little voice, far too serious, do you want some? I don't know if I should. I mean, I'm just a servant. I've not seen your face before, she said, peering up at me, as though she had only just realized. Did you think I was trying to trick her? Who are you? Oliver, was my simple response. I was a simple boy, and I did not feel the need to elaborate. The girl nodded seriously, as though trying to commit a Shakespearean sonnet to memory. Her cheeks puffed out, like they had done when they had been stuffed with mulberries, and I found myself smiling despite myself. Okay, Oliver, she said, once her brain had been thoroughly fertilized with this piece of knowledge, you are a servant. A stable boy. Make sure you watch out for crabapple. She bites. Thank you, I shall keep that in mind, I said. I wish I was wearing a hat so I could tip it for the small act of benevolence, but I was not, so I could not, and I did not. My father also works here as a stableman. You might know him. Oh, the girl's eyes lit up. It seems she did know him, because she clamped her hands together. Are you related to Eddie? That's right. Oh, good, she said. I like Eddie. He's nice to me. He tells me lots of stories, and he always makes sure to slip crab apples a sugar cube, even when he's being naughty. And does he slip one for you too? Shush, she held a black-red finger against her equally black-red lips, her eyebrows furrowed. That's supposed to be a secret. All right, I apologize. My mistake. She looked at me archly. Make sure you don't tell Mummy. She says I shouldn't eat too much sugar. She thinks it will spoil my appetite. Well, that is true. She's right. I'm sure she wouldn't want you eating all those mulberries either. The look of intense concentration was back on her face, and she pondered, rocking back and forth on her heels, but not for very long. She turned, the skirts of her dress fluttering, reaching up on the very tips of her toes to the boughs of the tree, and nimbly twisted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mulberries off the branch with a well-practiced hand. "Shut your eyes," she told me, her tone stern and authoritative. "Shut your eyes," she told me, her tone stern and authoritative. There you go. Fuck, I can't pronounce that word. "And take what Providence will send you?" I asked. Her brow furrowed. "Please, take this seriously. This is no time to recite nursery rhymes." I laughed. I apologized. I could not help myself. "Humph." She scowled. It was probably a technique she had learned from her mother, like I had learned harried concern from mine. Maybe that was why I found myself obeying her, though she was shorter than a pixie. Cool. Obligingly, I let my eyelids fall shut and waited. As I waited, I could feel sweat beading on my back, beneath my shirt. The wind tousled my hair, and the sun beat down on the nape of my neck. "Stretch out your hand," was her next instruction, and I did. I extended my arm, the palm facing upwards, and she deposited the 5 black glossy mulberries upon it. I blinked, lashes fluttering, and looked down at the spalls in my palm. She must have pierced one of them with her fingernails, because they leaked black-red fluid onto my skin. I said I didn't want any, I told her, but she wasn't having any of it. "No," she said firmly, "you eat them. You have to. Therefore, we will now become accomplices." "I know what you're doing, little girl." "Why?" I asked. "So you can't tattle on me to Mummy," she said, as though it was that simple, and that took care of that. "If you try, I'll tell her you picked the mulberries first and you told me to eat them. You sly, manipulative bastard. If that is your plan, you shouldn't have told me it. I'm hardly going to fall for it now." "Well, I'm not going to eat those mulberries," she said stubbornly, turning her nose up in the air. "Somebody has to." "I could just drop them. The birds will eat them." "Don't you dare," she said crossly, stamping one foot against the ground. "I gave them to you. It's a present. It's rude to refuse a present." I was beginning to feel like those mulberries were more akin to criminal evidence than a lovingly prepared present, but I did not want to upset her, not on our first day, our first meeting. It did not seem worth it. Even back then, I did not want to upset her. All right, I said, trying to placate her. "I'll eat them. Will that make you happy?" "It would be acceptable." "Fine, then here goes," I said, and I tipped back my head and dropped the mulberries onto my tongue. Then I got poisoned. I died. They were sharp, charred, and when I bit through the skins of the blackberries, bitterness spread throughout my mouth, making the tip of my tongue quiver. Maybe they needed a couple more days to ripen to become sweeter, more palpable, but she was an impatient girl, and she would never have waited for something like that. She wanted the berries now, so she had to have them now, even if the flavor was too sharp, too pointed like a knitting needle through the roof of the mouth. They made her stomach churn in the night so she could not sleep. Fuck. What's going on with the neighbor's dog outside? The neighbor's dog is having a conversation with my neighbor's dog. She never thought about the future. Spirited, some would say, if you're inclined to be kind, like some of the servants who did not have to interact with her on a frequent basis. Impetuous, her mother always said with a pained sigh. I just thought she was stubborn. What's have you smiling? "So this is our little secret, right?" she asked with a smug little smile. She was so pleased with herself and her cunning, one would have thought she had managed to dupe a gentleman detective. Well, who was I to spoil her fun? I was starting to enjoy it myself. "That's right, our little secret," I said. "You won't tell Mummy, will you?" she asked, her eyebrows furrowed over her bright green eyes. How many times are you gonna furrow your eyebrows or whatever? Fuck. This is like the 5th time already. I took one step backwards as though shocked by the mere suggestion and said, "I would not dream of it, milady." Good," she said, and then she paused, frowned, still digging the tip of her shoe against the ground. "But you don't need to call me that." "What?" "Milady." "But I am your servant." "I know, but I don't like it. It sounds strange," she said, pouting. She did not elaborate on why it sounded strange. Maybe she did not have the words to express herself, but I think I understood. We were not so very apart in age, and after I had eaten those slightly underripe mulberries, maybe she thought we had made some kind of bond, a pact. I had promised. Well, what should I call you? I asked her. My name, she said simply. She said so many things simply, and then and now, as though she expected the world to bow to her every single whim. She was the kind of girl who would say, I wish it would stop raining, and sincerely believe that it would. In fact, she would be offended if it did not, because she was used to getting her own way, and the mere suggestion that some facts of life could not bow to her every whim was preposterous to her, so she's a spoiled brat. Unthinkable. She was spoiled, horrendously so, but that, if anything, only endeared me to her further. Your name, all right, I said with a small nod of my head, as though it was not important. As though I was not overstepping my bounds, my rights, and acting far, far beyond the station of a mere stable boy. Maybe she did not realize what a great sacrifice I was making for her. Maybe she did, and she just did not care. It's nice to meet you, Matilda. Matilda? That girl that does the psychic powers or whatever in that one movie I watched a while back when I was a kid? The smile that spread across her face was so wide, so dazzling it made me wonder whether she was a human girl at all, and not an angel descended from heaven. Really, how could I hate her? I have never hated her, not for a moment, though there have been times where I have wished I could throttle her, or smother her with a pillow, or strangle her with her own hair. What the fuck? Because she can be so thoughtless and insensitive and selfish, but... hate her? Oh no, I've never hated her. She was far too bright, far too bold. Okay. Far too beautiful. Right. 1790, the second summer. Right, okay. By the second summer, we had become closer and I had begun to learn more about her. I gathered even the smallest details I gleaned to my breast, selfish and secretive like a squirrel storing away acorns in the hollow of an old oak. Wanted to know everything about her, completely and utterly, skin and blood and bone. Relax, is that not what friendship is? There's a fine line there, man. Foolishly, I really did believe that we were friends. As I discovered, she absolutely hated her tutors. Whether it was time to play the piano or practice her needlepoint or conjugate her French verbs, she would be off like a shot, quicker than a hare fleeing from a hound. It did not take me long to learn that she would hide herself away amongst the overgrown, overly green trees in her garden. She had so much garden. It seemed like an insult to describe it with such minute terms. It was more like a field, a forest, its very own country. When Maddie wanted to hide away from the rest of society with her chamomile, whatever, tea, and coiffured hair, and pompous airs, she would melt away into the landscape and become such as inconspicuous as any other tree or bush or shrub. It was impossible to find her. Impossible for all but myself, it seemed. She sat on the boughs of the old mulberry tree, her dirty skirts pulled in her lap, rucked up about her legs so her thighs pressed firm against the bark. She did not seem to care, though. It never bothered her. She was never a very ladylike lady, more wild child than innocent angel, despite my first impressions. The painting above the mantelpiece had smoothed out her flashing eyes, her pointed lips, her almost perpetually furrowed brow. Again with the fucking furrowed brow. It had turned her into something she was not. Perhaps something her overbearing mother would have preferred she was. Maybe that's why I devised a nickname for her. It seemed to capture more of her essence than Matilda ever could. A name assigned by her mother, Lady Addison, in the hopes she would one day follow in her footsteps. I, meanwhile, prayed that she never would. Right. Hello, Maddie. Are you being naughty again? Where is she? Is she up above the mulberry tree? Yeah, she is. Maddie, high on her perch, rolled her eyes and plucked another mulberry off the tree. She twisted it firmly, deftly, with the tips of her pale white fingers and popped it into her mouth. So what if I am? She asked, her words indistinct through mulberry mush. She talked with her mouth open. Her mother hated it when she did that. I knew it was improper to address her so informally, especially when I was a mere servant, but how could I not? Servant or no, we were friends. I thought we were. You should not hide from your mother, Maddie. She just wants the best for you. Well, I don't wanna, she answered, still slurring her words through a mouthful of seeds. It's so boring. But she is trying to turn you into a lady. Don't you want that, to be a lady? I'd rather eat dirt. I never had tutors, you know, I told her, leaning against the trunk of the tree. My parents would never have been able to afford it. She sighed wistfully. Lucky. I think you're the lucky one. Not many people can afford to have an education. You're only saying I'm lucky because you don't know what it's like, she said, puffing out her cheeks. It's so boring. You should be grateful for every opportunity you have, yeah. But why should I need to know French? She demanded, kicking her legs back and forth through the empty air. I'm never gonna go to France. That makes sense, especially since, whatever. Sometimes tutors just teach you things that are not really relevant in in what you're trying to pursue. So what's up with that? Or not just tutors, but the school system. Like, I don't want to learn this. This is not what I'm aiming for, man. Not school, even college. Yeah, you don't know that. And what's wrong with France? It might be nice to go abroad. No, she said firmly, her voice unusually harsh for such a little girl. It would not. And how do you know that? Because it's filled with French people. Oh, fuck yeah, I hate French. I hate French people. Well, I scratched my sunburned cheek with a finger and tried to suppress a smile. It didn't work. She had such a neat little way of phrasing things, her words clipped and her voice taut, that it was impossible to argue with her. It was impossible not to get drawn in. You might have a point there, I said, and then I started to laugh. See, everybody hates the French. I'm always right, she replied, and though she was usually so stoic, her lips drawn into a line, she smiled too. Leant against the trunk of the mulberry tree, my head tilted back. I could see her sitting above me, her legs kicking and her strappy shoes glinting in the summer sun. I wouldn't mind going to Europe, though, I said, staring up at the blue sky and white clouds. I wondered briefly if the sky was like this in France too, or if it was even bluer. Nah, it's the same thing wherever you go. Just the locations change. It's your, it's your placebo, kinda, like, because my location changed, the sky looks different. No, it's not. It's the same sky as every place else. What about the stars of the night sky twinkling coldly, resolutely, above our heads? Were they the same? Were they any different? Nope, they're still the same sky. It was pointless to ponder, given I would never be able to go to France, but dreams were cheap, and reality was often disappointing. True. Maddie frowned. Why? I don't know. It would be an experience. Well, Maddie reconsidered, still letting her legs sway to and fro. Going to France would be awful if I was with Mummy, or Mrs. Montague, or my tutors, but maybe it would be alright if I was with you. So that was how it was it? There was a clear you and them split. Me on one side, everyone else on the other. Her mother, nurse, and tutors were all dull and bland and boring, not worth Maddie's time or attention, or even affection. All they received were pursed lips and rolled eyes. But not me. I was different. I was special. Okay, who's the one gonna go crazier? Is it me or the little girl? I had to duck my head to hide my flustered cheeks. 1791, the third summer. By the third summer, we had become closer still. Maddie herself had changed, at least, not to a great extent. I suppose she was slightly taller, her eyes a touch narrower, but her features were more or less the same, just shifted slightly to accommodate for the coming and going of a year. Her hair was just as blonde, beautifully radiant, and it continued to fall about her shoulders in a wild, messy tangle. Her eyes were just as green, bold, and piercing like those of a cat's. Her manners were just as unpolished, and there was something almost feral in the way she shimmyed her way up into the welcoming boughs of the old mulberry tree, digging her fingernails into the bark and hauling herself upwards while the soles of her shoes struggled to find purchase. In terms of her appearance, she had changed, yeah, but it was so slight the change was hardly noticeable. In terms of her personality, she had not changed at all. She was no different from the young girl she had been when I first met her, cheeks and fingers and the folds of her dress smeared with black-red fruit pulp, and I was glad of it. I was so glad I could have cried. I had thought she would mature as time went on, like the mulberries in her much-beloved tree. The mulberries were sour to the taste during late springtime, but they would ripen, becoming fuller, richer, sweeter in the midst of the summer heat. I was afraid Maddie would do the same. I did not want her to be sweet. The sweetness of a lady was not truly sweet at all. It was false, a veneer to wear amongst others, for the sake of social etiquette. I far preferred her when she was sour. It made her easier to interact with. It made her feel less like an unmatchable, unreachable image, Lady Matilda Addison, and more like an equal. A girl I wanted so dearly to call a friend. If she was not my friend, if she was not Maddie, I would never have dared to address her so casually, as I often found myself doing during those long summer months. Yep, I'm gonna go. Wait, what? I thought you matured. You still look the same. Are you sure you should still be wearing that old thing, Maddie? Maddie, resplendent on her perch in the trees, like a colorful bird, only rolled her eyes in response. She was always rolling them round and round inside her sockets, inside her skull, until I worried they would fall out. Of course, it would have been more practical to worry about Lady Addison pitching Matilda's arm, leaving red welts for her insolence. She has not changed at all. I was never very practical, sensible maybe, but practical? No, I was far too busy dreaming. I must have inherited it from my mother, a dreamer, not a doer. In any case, Maddie was rolling her eyes. I can remember that clearly. You sound like my mother, she told me dryly, her feet kicking back and forth through the empty air. Are you my mother? I am not, Lady Addison, no. Then do not talk like her, she said, petulant, pouting. What a child. Okay. What had I expected? She was only 11 years old, on the cusp of girlhood, eyes wide fringed with blonde lashes, perhaps a little more world-weary than she liked to let on. She was more intelligent than she acted, Maddie. Always had been. That was probably why her tutors got so angry with her. Her mother, too. All that wasted potential. But I preferred her like that. I worried if she threw away the attachments of her childhood and learned how to sew a comforter and sit up straight when she played the piano, then she would realize just how far beneath her I was. Then she might never wish to speak to me again. Yep, that's reality for ya. I am not trying to talk like your mother, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, level, non-accusatory, the same tone I might use when trying to coax Crabapple, who was almost but not quite as ill-tempered as the still a little girl who rode her. Do not nag me then. If you do, I shan't speak to you anymore. I winced. It stung. She may not have meant it with malice, but it hurt. Oh, I'm gonna go crazy. I let my voice fall to a whisper, my gaze fall to the ground. If I stared, I thought I could almost see the ants as they trekked through the grass, bathing in the squashed, sticky carcasses of all the pulped, overripe mulberries, rotting in the summer sun. But they rotted so sweetly. The smell was almost dizzying. I don't want you to get in trouble. I always get in trouble, said Maddie carelessly. Maddie, with her tangled hair and calloused hands, and the mysterious bruises that seemed to flourish across the backs of her legs, her arms above the elbow, her clavicle and collarbone. Clavicle? Yeah. Lady Addison always asked Maddie, voice stern, how she came to have quite so many bruises, ugly things that they were, and Maddie would always shrug and say that she did not know. Logically, I knew it was because she was always outside, roughhousing, climbing trees and riding horses and jumping over gates she could have easily opened, but sometimes I wondered. She never let out any exclamations of pain when she was busy playing, so I could never tell when she had sustained injury. Maybe she couldn't either. Her bruises seemed almost magical to me, talismans, as though they had been smeared across her skin by pixies, goblins, elves. Sometimes I found myself staring at them, especially the ones on the backs of her knees, just barely visible when she fussed with the hem of her skirt. There you go. She didn't like wearing skirts. She said they were a pain. Lady Addison said that she was a pain, and either gave her a look, as cold as ice, or a pinch. Couldn't you try to get into less trouble, though? I asked Maddie. And be a bore as sits at the piano and combs my hair 100 times before I go to bed, she countered. Is that what you want? I swallowed. My saliva felt far too... Salvia? What's a salvia? My saliva... Isn't supposed to be saliva, whatever. Far too sweet, too cloying. There was far too much of it. It wasn't what I wanted at all. I didn't want Maddie to drift away from me. I wanted her all for myself. Every last bit. Every inch of her skin, every single bruise, even her individual eyelashes that meshed together when she blinked. Event? The freckles on the bridge of her nose, even the patches of sunburn on her cheeks, braced pink by the relentless summer sun. Maybe it's even the freckles, not event. But I didn't know how to put it into words back then, and even if I did, I would not have been able to say them. It hurt too much. Right. Ow, my back. Is there anything more painful than being unable to express yourself? I don't know, being tortured to death? Being a prisoner of war? 1792, the fourth summer. Alright. In the fourth summer, Maddie had a crisis? Oh, God. Well, I should end it here because I have to prepare for work now. What a cliffhanger, right, fellas? So this is Round the Mulberry Bush. If you want to try the game for yourselves, the links are in the description. That is all for today. Stay safe and take care of yourselves. when the dialogue said that Maddie had changed, Maddie had matured, and then it's the same goddamn character portrait. I'm like, why? Okay. Or maybe this is the eyes of the, what's his name, Oliver? Maybe this is, we're seeing through Oliver's eyes that she did not actually mature, even though in reality she is. But because he sees Oliver as wanting Maddie to stay the same, this is why the character portrait still is. And if that's the case, if that was the point, then very clever of you. If it's not, that's still an accidental genius thing to do. Pretty good, I think. Although there are a few really redundant phrases, really redundant sentences, just trying to sound pretentious. But hey, it's still keeping me interesting. It still kept me interested in reading it. So yeah, that's good. Just cut the fat off. Yeah.